Live right now.
Okay, all right, cool.
Hey guys, how you doing? Martin Lopez from the Curiosity Theory, and today we are going to be talking about beliefs, attitudes, and actions. And I have actually four guests, hopefully. And right now I have three really good friends of mine and three amazing human beings. Clay, I got Yoram, but we call him Yoram, and then Paul Walmsley's on the phone. And I'm going to tell you my quick relationship with all three of them. I have been meditating on and off for well over 20 years. About 3 years ago, I met Clay. About four, five. This. So it's 4 years, maybe five. So 4 or 5 years ago, I met Clay and immediately started being mentored by Clay. And he started introducing me to two other practices. I was doing meditation, so he introduced me to journaling, which I would read a journal, but a different way of journaling, and a gratitude practice. And that has transformed my life. Now, Yoram and I have met on several occasions. I have never had a single conversation with Yoram that I didn't leave like rethinking like my molecules, the way my life is. Like I just would always like rethink my life. Like I'm like, all right, now I'm going to do it this way. And he's giving like these really amazing ideas. His accomplishments are amazing. We're not going to get into too many of them, but I'll tell you something. If you want to follow somebody, follow these two guys. The other gentleman that's on the phone is a family member, a really good friend of mine, Paul Walmsley. He is a collegiate level NCAA championship soccer player and coaches at college level as well. And so let's kind of just dive in really quick and go to Clay. Because I know what I want to do, Clay, is just start with your story. And what we're going to do is Yoram and Paul and my buddy Steven's going to come on in a little bit as well. But then what we're going to do is we're going to kind of talk about beliefs, attitudes, and actions. But let's talk about you, Clay. Like, how did you get started doing what you're doing, and go from there?
Thank you, Martin. First off and foremost, I love my life. I love my life because I meet cool people like you, and it just keeps rippling. Yoram, it's an honor to meet you, Paul. I'm excited to learn about you and meet both you guys and hear more about you guys. And I love that aspect of, I'm going to say it this way, our lives. I'm pretty sure this is not an uncommon thing between everybody on the call. And Yoram and I we're having this little conversation on exactly how to pronounce and make sure I'm doing it right. Yoram, okay. And it's really important to me. It's really important to me to pronounce somebody's name right. And I know that Martin might be like, wait, what are we talking about? Meditation? Yeah.
Let's keep going. It's all the same, brother.
So I was, real quick background. I want to give you guys a quick glimpse into why I can talk about what I'm talking about today and why I'm an expert. Step one, I was an Alabama high school graduate. I got out of high school, and if you're thinking about Forrest Gump right now, y'all be good doing that right there.
Roll Tide, huh?
Roll Tide. Nothing insulting about anybody with a Southern accent at all. I still have one when I get tired, especially. I got out of high school and did the normal thing. I got pregnant and had a baby with a young lady, and it's a scary, crazy thing when I look back at how ingrained behaviors are in our society. But I went in the Navy because I got financially in trouble. I went in the Navy and I became a nuclear reactor operator. Now take a pause right there and think about that. That's not a bomb launcher or a missile tech. That is someone that sits there and operates, and I'm holding a switch. Believe it or not, I still remember the right way to do it is I had to reach anyway. Operating a nuclear reactor.
You had the red button.
I had a scram button. I had a button that shuts down the reactor. That's what that red button does. Not launches it, but shuts it down.
Okay.
Which could almost be as bad depending on the situation.
Sure.
But the part that's important there is this: physics, subatomic physics and engineering, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering. I had to learn so much stuff about so many things to be qualified to sit there and control this nuclear power plant on a submarine. And I'm sorry, when we went to sea, we were at war. There was no not at war situation when you're at sea on a submarine. It's just you're at war.
Interesting.
So there's a whole lot of stuff there. First, half the people that go through that class don't make it through that class, the training. I made it through the 50. I made it in the upper 50% of the 50% that made it through less than 50%. And they picked me up as a trainer. And this gets us to Yoram. After the Navy, I kept pursuing my training, and I got into particle accelerators for semiconductor manufacturing. Particle accelerators, atomic. Whoa, is that you, Martine? You might want to mute there.
My bad.
My volume's up. So, particle accelerators and training people like Intel, like the chip. They don't make phones. They don't make computers. They make the chips inside the phones and the computers. Chip manufacturing, and one of the processes that happens there is you have to accelerate particles. Long story short, 20 plus years, subatomic physics expertise, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, electromechanical engineering, troubleshooting and problem solving, engineering, manufacturing, all that capped with, I didn't just learn it to go do it and fix the things. I learned it, and I was very good at teaching others about it. So I've been this adult trainer my whole life. Martine wanted me to talk about the deer story. So let me connect one more dot real quick.
So the thing is you understand how the point that you make. I always say
I'm going there.
How the brain works. That's subatomic stuff, right? Is that what you're getting to? Okay.
So I got in. During that career, I fell in love with two things. I fell in love with. I left one wife, fell in love with another. There's a whole lot of love going on there.
Not with another wife, right?
One became a wife, but that's no okay. Anyway, two sports. I fell in love with two sports. One was snowboarding and one was sport bike motorcycle riding. The point is, I took this engineering, deep understanding, ability to train subatomic physics discussions and understanding to the worlds of snowboarding and sport bike motorcycling, which has a lot to do with your body. Like if you think about skiing or snowboarding, you lean left or right, how much pressure you put on your pinky toe or your big toe matters. So I got into the body. Fast forward a little bit, I learned how to ride a sport bike. I spent about a decade teaching new motorcycle riders one lesson. And it's the same lesson that I teach today. Think, do not react. Why? Because on a motorcycle, if you do something as small as this, and if everybody's watching right now, take a really close look at my right hand. Did you see that? Did you see it move? It's the right hand which holds the throttle, and you roll off the throttle a little bit, and you roll back on the throttle a little bit. Just this little blip. If you do that at the wrong time, you can die. Now, what does that mean?
Let's stick with that. So what you're saying is, on a motorcycle, if you're you're hitting a curve, you do the wrong forward or backward here.
Well, what causes that? So on a motorcycle, you're going around that curve Martine was talking about. You're going around that turn, and let's say you see a spot of gravel, or you see a squirrel, or you see a deer, or you see a car coming at you. Anything in your body, that you're perceiving that causes you to be a little bit nervous about that situation, or let's use the big word, terrified and scared, the first thing you want to do on a motorcycle is slow down. So the body automatically reacts with that deceleration motion, which, just for the record, in almost every, except for one specific example, in almost every situation on a motorcycle, that's the wrong thing to do. The right thing to do is either hold the throttle constant or roll on the throttle. So the next thing that happens is the rider realizes I did the wrong thing, I need to correct it, and they yank back on the throttle. So what ends up happening is I go around the curve, I see something scary, I want to slow down. This is not conscious thought. The first conscious thought is, I screwed up, I got to get back on the throttle. That causes the bike to bob back and forth, and that's what I mean when I say, if you do something this small at the wrong time, it could kill you. People died. I know people that have died because they did that at the wrong time. I've seen many, many crashes. And that brings us to the exciting story, right, Martine? Many crashes. So
listen up, guys. This is a crazy story.
All this. So one more little piece. Business. My whole life, I wanted to be my own business owner. I wanted to be a business owner, and I kept trying and kept trying and kept trying and kept failing and kept failing and kept failing, and I didn't know what was going on. And this all kind of happened about the same time, back in the summer of 2012. So we're at the point now where this is 7 years ago. I can't believe, man, I'm getting so old. Okay, so about 7 years ago, I was in a business class, and I really was interested in why that idiot was able to do what he was able to do, and that silly person, that silly little boy, was able to do what he was able to do. And they're both. One of them's really brilliant, but he's freaking socially awkward as hell. The other one is this little boy that is dumb as hell and no wisdom at all. But I'm like, how the heck, right? I'm sitting here judging people. Yes, I'm doing that, just like we all do. But why not me? And I found the one reason. I found the one reason. And that one reason is my background. My background had conditioned me and trained me and made all these connections in my head, all this wiring, all this programming that made me have certain beliefs. That kid and that socially awkward genius and a dozen, actually more than 3 dozen other people, they all had different belief circles than I did. And that's what made them be able to succeed. Now, that was one piece of it. The second piece is, you ready for this? Martine, I know you love this part. I was driving home one day on my motorcycle after an awesome ride. I was doing about 85 miles an hour. I came out of a turn. I looked down. I was doing about 95. I know the road. I was going to go around another turn. I looked down. I set my speed about 85. I marked my turn-in spot. Everything's great. All this stuff is awesome. And here I am zipping around. I'm thinking, okay, I want to keep my front tire about this far from the white line. I want to maintain that turn, that arc around this turn coming up and keep my tire right there. Beautiful day, sunny, clouds, all this beautiful stuff. I'm sitting there. Everything's just wonderful. All of a sudden, I saw a deer eye. It was literally about this far in front of me. And all I saw was a big, round, brown deer eye. I thought, well, gonna die. White line, white line, white line, white line. I don't want to take up all the time. This is a good 20 to 30 minute story that I could fill in all kinds of gory and exciting details. But here's the bottom line. The deer hit right in front of my right hand. The deer was going full speed this way. I was doing 85 miles that way, 85 miles per hour that way. When it hit, I felt it died, and I felt its neck break. My front tire did this. My bike did this. In other words, my front tire turned. My motorcycle jumped. I flew about 13 feet that way before I hit the ground, and I moved about 6 feet to the left before I hit the ground. I know this because of the tracks. I know this, and I have photographic evidence. Yes, I went and bought a GoPro like 2 or 3 days later. Here's the cinch. You ready? Even though that happened and I was on a sport bike, not like a dirt bike or a Harley, a really big Harley, I was on a very light sport bike, and this bike was jumping and bucking all over the place. Even though all that happened, I did not crash. I was doing 85 miles an hour on a sport bike. A deer hit me right here, right in front of my wrist, felt this body wrap around me. What happened the next 5 seconds? That's that gory detail. Like, it's not gory, but it's a very detailed story, and we don't have the time to go into it. Here's the lesson. 2-3 days later, my motorcycle was broken. I didn't crash. I didn't hit the ground. I didn't tumble. I kept the bike up, and I parked the bike on the side of the road. I had to get my truck, bring the truck out, pick it up, all that stuff. 2 or 3 days later, I found a book. And my big question was, how the hell did that happen? So I did not have a near-death experience. This was not come to Jesus moment. This was just this calm, cool reaction. Something happened, I adjusted. Something else happened, I adjusted. Everything was just perfect. I made my way around the turn and I stopped. And then I kind of freaked out. And my number one question was, how? How did that happen?
How did
3 days later,
die?
how did I not crash? How did I not die? How did it happen? 3 days later, something like that, 2, 3, 4 days later, I found a book called The Rise of Superman. The Rise of Superman is by a guy named Stephen Kotler, and it talks about the state of flow. It's a really good book. The book after The Rise of Superman is what Martine just showed. It's called Stealing Fire. Both of those books are awesome, and both of those books explain exactly what happened in my head 7 years ago to keep me alive in those 5 seconds. That, Martine, is my origin story of why I dove like swan dive belly flop into the brain. And I've spent the last 7 years studying the brain and really understanding how the brain connects to the body, how the brain connects to your beliefs, and how your beliefs connect to your attitudes or your thoughts, and how those connect to your actions, which connect to your results. And that's what I've been doing for the last 7 years of my life, is helping people get better and better and better results in their lives, mostly business owners.
Wonderful.
So here's my story, brother.
I love that story. That's a great story. I'm going to open it up to Yoram and Paul. And do you have any questions for Clay, kind of like, or any comments or anything? And then we'll kind of move on to beliefs, attitudes, and actions, and how that like works around what you're saying.
Well, I would just say, thank God. I'm grateful for everything. Grateful, first of all, grateful to be here. Thank you, Martine, for inviting me. But when I hear these stories, and I kind of, it makes me recall some of my stories. I'm not going to go into details. I'll just give you the headlines, where I was in a bad car crash with my newlywed wife 3 days into our honeymoon in a foreign country. And I kind of remember these things. And all I can say is I'm grateful for the part of that conditioning that allowed you to go through the motions and stay alive and then trigger questions. And I love Stephen Kotler. More power to you, my friend.
What, Yoram, when you had that crash, what did you have some kind of epiphany? Did something shift for you, or were you already in a really like cool place already?
Not at first. I was in my 20s. You know, it's kind of like, yeah, all right, I'm in my 20s. What do I know?
What do you know?
But, you know, where I was driving like this little car, and to make the long story very, very short, I don't think it's the time for it. I came out from one country where you don't turn left when you don't have a left arrow traffic light. And I went towards that intersection, and my light was green, and I didn't know that the people coming from across have a green light as well. And I just kind of glance at the map, go, all right, turn into the thing, and up comes that 18-wheeler.
Whoa!
And the only reason why I'm here talking to you today is because that thing hit me. I hit with my front left corner of the car, one wheel, spun around and hit with my right rear tire, the other wheel, and got bounced the other way. Because otherwise, I would have just gone underneath the damn thing and was strawberry ketchup on the floor.
Whoa.
So,
I feel you, Yoram.
you know, gives me goosebumps. So, you know, and then a few weeks later, my mentor back then, because I just started with personal development, asking me, so why do you think you're alive? And that question stuck with me. And that took me down the path of life purpose. And that took me down the path of pure chance. And I can't tell you that I have an answer, but there are things that you can adopt, going back to beliefs, that there are things you can adopt as beliefs and go, I choose to believe that. And I'm going to build on top of that my attitudes, my actions, my plans, everything that's going forward, and just start from there. You know, start from there and build on that. And it's always a foundational experience that you go back to. And with that foundational experience, you get the emotional backup to your beliefs, to your decisions, to your actions. That gives you power.
I love it. I love it. And what do you teach, Yoram, real quick?
Well, right now, I'm trying to teach people to get out of this damn collective shock we're at.
I love it. We definitely got to dive into that for sure.
I have, it's like time after time, the conversation is we're in a collective overwhelm globally, and we got to snap out of it. Number one, because this is not a flu, like you're going to be in bed for 3 days and go back to normal. That normal is dead. It's gone. There's going to be a new normal, right? But here's the other thing. This is why, Martin, I love so much what you're doing, because the first people to snap out of the overwhelm and start talking and helping are going to be tomorrow's leaders. Because they are, I mean, I'm amazed at, honestly, I'm amazed on some of my buddies who are in the teaching world who are like all but gone now. You don't see them. You can't find them. And there are other people's. And that's not just you and me. There's a lot of people who are like, all right, well, guys, we got to do something. Let's try this.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Let's see what works.
That's right.
Right?
Let's give this a shot.
Yeah. I teach basically two things: high performance and decisive action. And oddly enough, right now, high performance is being able to make quick adjustments, and decisive action means actually getting into imperfect action, because there is literally no time to perfect a new plan. We got to go with the flow and try what there is, and do our best based on what we can. Try this. And you don't want to have a checkpoint every 3 months. You want to have a checkpoint every 3 days, maybe. Yeah. Let's see what's going on. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes so much sense.
I love that. So let's go drop back into, well, you said something, Clay, and I wanted to address that really quick. We were talking about being programmed. So we were all programmed. Like I come from, south part of San Diego. It was just, I love where I lived. It was kind of a tough area, lots of gangs. I've been in trouble, with like life kind of stuff that I could have gotten killed more than a couple times. I made some decisions that were just by accident, that I wasn't with certain people, and when people actually got killed and things like that. So I've lucked out in my life. Those things have made me think about what I want to do with my life, and they sure did. They changed my trajectory back then, and they did program me. They actually, I don't know if that programmed me. That kind of woke me up more than anything, like, wow, I'm like hanging out with the wrong guys here. People, one New Year's Eve, two of my really good friends got murdered, and I would have went with them, and they got shot in the back of the head. So I would have went where they went, but I wasn't with them. And that makes you think, wow, I don't know if I want to hang out with those guys. I just happened to hang out with some different guys that night.
You don't really have an option at that point, home.
Yeah.
Right. Is that what you're laughing about? You're going to say, hanging out with him.
Yeah. It's like, no more hanging out with them.
You know what? Can I jump in right there? So we're talking. Okay, I kind of want to also focus this, just like Yoram, on what's going on right now in this world.
Yeah. Let's get there.
For example, and I'm connecting to what you just said.
Yeah.
You guys see me touching my face a lot, don't you? Here's why. I decided not to shave, and I'm gonna grow a beard during this isolation period. I've also not had a haircut. Yoram, yours is a lot more stylish than mine right now. Like you've got it dialed.
I'm a little hippie now.
I'm trying to decide whether I want to go that way or that way. But so what you see is me reacting. You see me reaching up here and feeling this texture that I'm not used to feeling in this place. So my body is unconsciously making me react. That's just one little example.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, going back to what Martin was saying about programming, one of the first questions I've been working. I don't know if you guys are playing on LinkedIn or not, but I highly recommend it from our professional perspective. And if you're not using LinkedIn as a professional, please start, because you've been telling me to do that. I haven't listened. Well, we'll talk. But the first question, one of the first questions I ask new potential clients or people that I might help is, hey, what did your mom and dad do for money when you were 1 year old? So I'm asking, this is very important. They can't freaking remember at 1. Research has shown, and everything has been proved. There's been more studies on this than I can count, and I have not reached the bottom of the stuff I could read about this. But the first 12 to 36 months of your life, depending on what you're surrounded by, that's when the majority of your gray matter is built. Your brain is built then. Now, Martine said, maybe I was programmed, maybe I wasn't. And when Yoram and I were talking about our backstories, there's a couple, there's like three things. One, there's the unconscious programming. The people that you're hanging around with, and Yoram, the way you said our collective consciousness right now, our collective fear that we're all gripped with.
Yeah.
There's this unconscious thing that is happening. And that's why I ask when these people were 1 year old, because at 1 year old, their parents weren't teaching them how to be good accountants or good teachers or good business owners or good factory workers. My father was a factory worker. Those other people that were successful, but I wasn't, guess what their parents did? Their parents were some kind of business owner. So they weren't, I'm not saying they were successful. I'm saying they were that mindset and that mindset that they were around. So we're talking about unconscious programming.
Yeah.
Next step, Yoram, you talked about the why, right? I agree that your accident that you described happened in your early 20s. I'm 100% with you. When I was in my early 20s on a submarine, there was about a 30 to 45 second period. I knew I was dead. I knew I was going to die. And then the announcement came, secure from the drill. And that's when things returned to normal. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to die. But I call it the come to Jesus moment. When you really connect to, okay, proximity to mortality is another way to say this.
Proximity to mortality. I like that.
Proximity to mortality. Right. Meaning you're aware that this thing that you're dealing with has an end. Now, the third level, which is the story I told about the deer, is kind of when all my background kind of came together. And it's this moment where it's like, okay, or as Steve Jobs says it, I see how the dots in my past connect to this moment. And now, just like you were saying, Yoram, I'm 100% with you. Now it's time, based on all those dots that I have and all these things that I know and the why that I have, what's the decision I'm going to make? Which way do I want to go? And that's the point. That decision process, I think, Yoram, you and I probably both help people do that. And that's what I mean when I say think, don't react. Because like Martine, when his buddies died, condolences and all that stuff, but also appreciation and thanks, because that made you think. Some people that you know probably reacted in that situation, right? There was reactions happening that led to more pain and discomfort.
Yeah, led to a lot more bad stuff happening. Absolutely.
Probably uncontrolled reaction.
So that's where I'm coming from with this whole thing. And now,
I love that. So we're all programmed, whether, and right now TV's programming it, our telephones are programming ourselves, our parents, our neighbors, everybody we associate, it all becomes stuff that it all becomes input. Somehow it becomes input, and then our brain then works around that, makes sense of it, and then we then make conclusions. It affects our attitude, and then ultimately affects our immediately actually affects our action, but ultimately affects our habitual actions, right? Like how we become,
and our results.
Except that you need to filter that input.
Absolutely. But let's say pre-understanding we filter. How about let's talk for a minute about the pre-filter, like pre-understanding that we filter. Like there's a moment that we start to actually do that because things happen. Like Clay said, I started to examine what he started to examine. Then Yoram, you said the same thing. You had a question. Those questions, I believe, are, and the whole curiosity thing is, those questions that we have are what actually send us on our journey.
That's what I love about what you're doing, Martine. The curiosity theory, that you're setting that up perfectly. That's exactly that approach. If that's your default, then you are going to win. If the curiosity theory approach is your default, you're going to win. If you're always curious, I have a really good example, and I can connect this to the Corona thing.
Go ahead.
This is crazy. So I'm just going to say this right now. What's happening, Yoram, the thing that I've realized is what's happening with the consciousness of everyone, and the fear is everyone is becoming very, very hyper aware of their mortality. People are scared, and then maybe they're scared of the virus. Maybe they're scared because their grandparents are going to die, but they're scared. And our stories and our conditionings have trained us to displace that fear onto things that we can control about our life. So I can't control when I'm going to die, but you know what? I can control that I chose to get on a Facebook Live today with Martine. I can control the hours that I work. I can control the house that I live in to some extent. And then it starts backing out and backing out and backing out and becomes less control up to that ultimate fear. Well, right now we're being controlled and isolated, and we're having to sit here and focus on the fact that, you know what? This shit's real. You could go to the grocery store, and because you go to the grocery store, you could die. Like, it's that simple. You go fill up your car with gas, and you don't know, the guy on the other side of the gas could sneeze, and you could inhale this thing, and you could die. It's like Martine's story. He almost chose to go with those guys, chose not to. It's that present. So how is that? My question then is, how is that manifesting in your world? This morning, for example, I love my girl. I love my partner. I've been with her a decade.
I love it. You guys worry. We always got to worry when somebody says, "I love my girl."
I love her. I love her a lot. So I respect her. But here's the example. This is a great example. I watched something last night that I thought was funny. Whoa, Martine. There's some feedback going on there. So I watched something last night that I thought was funny. And so this morning, I thought it was so funny that I was excited to share it with her. Right? So this morning, I woke up and I'm like, "Hey, Tara, check this out." And I played it for her. And it was like about a 2-minute setup, let's say. And in that 2 minutes, there was a lot of stuff going on. And then there's the funny thing that I wanted to share with her, right? Well, in that 2 minutes, the setup, the conversations that they were having were very, very triggering to her. They were causing her to think about parts of her life and her story and her stuff that she's working on. I didn't think about that. I completely see it now. I can see how that minute or 2 minutes of video caused her to feel like the world was just hammering on her head, reminding her of all this bad stuff. I feel horrible about that now. I feel really bad that I did that to her, but the reality is I didn't do that to her. I was trying to make her laugh and smile and start the day with a funny. Yet she reacted. She got really angry. She's really good, and she recognized that, and we followed our procedures, and we kind of de-escalated the situation pretty quick. And I'm proud of that too. But it's that knowledge of understanding, of being curious. Like my question was, wait, what happened? I was curious, Martine. Thank you. Right? But so my question, let's go back. My question is, the thing I'm shining a light on is this coronavirus situation, the self-isolation thing. It's causing everyone to freak out. Why is it causing everyone to freak out? Proximity and blatant staring at your potential mortality is the ultimate thing. Fear of death. How is that fear of death manifesting in your world? Who's hoarded toilet paper? I haven't.
I haven't
But
either.
that is another symptom of it. They can't control whether they can die or not, but they can control whether they have 36 packs of toilet paper in the house. They can control that. So it's this sense of control. So how's that manifesting in your life? And I'm asking everybody out there, comment right now.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah.
What's pissing you off right now? What's making you angry, or what's making you really scared? If you're
what's triggering you? Let's not say piss you off. How about let's go, because there's not everybody's scared of dying. Not everybody's like frightened. You know, I understand people experience fear.
Wait, Martin, that's my point.
Okay,
that's my whole point. What Martin just said is my kind of point. Not everybody's afraid. Not everybody's afraid of death. Real quick, everyone that's listening, if you are one of these people that stands up and beats their chest and says, no fear, leave this Facebook Live now.
I agree. I'm not saying that.
Run
I'm
from
not
me.
saying that. Yeah, I'm not saying that.
100%. The only people that are on this planet that are not afraid of death are people that literally have brain damage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay? If you're not able to admit that you're afraid of death, especially right now, sorry, man, I love you, but you got some work to do.
Sure.
The question is, how is it manifesting?
Okay.
Right. Because for everybody, there's a different definition. I spoke yesterday to a group of people in Mexico who wanted to learn about crisis. And they asked me, what is high performance during crisis? And I said, okay, well, let's leave the high performance aside. What is crisis? Crisis is the combination of a change with perceived danger, right? So, you know, if it's a big change, they multiply each other. If
Can
it's
you repeat that definition again? That was cool. What?
Yeah,
Crisis is what?
Crisis is a change multiplied in magnitude by danger. So if the danger is high, the crisis is going to be bigger. If the change is more of a change, it's a bigger change, it's going to make the crisis bigger. When you have a worldwide huge change that is happening, along with the danger of death, you have a big problem. These two multiply each other, right? So right now, whether somebody says, I am not afraid to die right now, it's not about them being afraid or not afraid to die, although I totally agree. If you're not afraid to die, then check again, kind of thing. But here's the thing. I think everybody would at least acknowledge the fact that there is a heightened danger of death. And when you look at it in the context of all the changes, now you got a crisis. So maybe you're not afraid to die, but you're sitting there thinking, well, but I can't go to work. And that's kind of tough if you're a massage therapist.
Yeah.
Or a dentist, you really can't give anyone a root canal through Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, they asked me, I tried, I thought about it. No way. No way.
Wait.
I got to drill.
Robots are coming.
They are coming.
Robots are coming.
Well, that could be a change too. Right?
Let me give my take on that though. So what I hear you saying is what we have, and I agree with you. So I'm going to say it my version, my way of saying it. So what we have is a heightened awareness of what triggers us. That's what I see that we have. So, you know, what we're seeing and the thing that I think we're doing that affects our beliefs, because we're talking about beliefs first, right? And our programming is where we go to get the information that we need for ourselves. So where are people going? Like, where are you going for the information that you need for yourself that feeds your brain? Are you feeding yourself with fear? Are you feeding yourself with facts about like how COVID's going to spread? Are you feeding yourself with
don't
facts?
Go to CNN.
What's that?
You know, please don't go to the television.
Exactly. That's the thing. Like, where are you going? And then where are the people that are giving you the information? Where are they coming from? What's in the background of why they're spreading the information they're spreading? And for me, the curiosity theory is about looking at that. Is like taking a curious look and saying, where is this information coming from? How is it affecting me? How am I using it to help myself, or how am I using it in a way that it's actually hurting myself? I'm actually hurting myself with this information because now I've got my brain spinning. I'm freaked out. I'm nervous. I'm now watching the news more and more and more and more. I'm on YouTube looking for stuff, and I have people that are sending me stuff all the time. Hey, read this, and coming from, Trump and, the Democrats and everybody. It's just, hey, look at this one, look at that one. And it's like, wow, and it's not that I appreciate people trying to educate me or trying to share information, but where is that information? What belief does the person have? Right? That's what we're saying, Clay. What belief do you have that this information is feeding into or becoming a part of?
Well, that's true. But let me ask you something.
Yes.
Part of that belief is the belief of where you should look at, right?
Talk about that. Yeah.
Because what you're saying in so many words is, people, when you look into fear, you're basically looking at what your version of what you think that might happen in the future that's not here yet, right?
I love it. Yes.
Right? And when I said it, and I keep saying that, and I like, thank you for the opportunity to say it here. It's like, to snap out of that overwhelm, to snap out of that shock, the first thing, and the two of you, I'm sure you're going to say the same, I hope, correct me if I'm wrong, is to just stop and breathe. Take a few short breaths. Why? To calm down the stress response in your package, in your body, the chemicals, and to become present. And then act on facts. And oh, by the way, when I say facts, I mean, you also need to choose which facts you want to act on, right? So I have people who will always look at it like all day long. It's like, is that going to help me to know exactly how many more people are infected right now?
Yeah.
No, I need the facts of where I am and how to work with that. Clay's story, it's such a great story. And I love these stories. I don't love that they happen, but I love these stories because big change, right? Big change with a big danger that created the crisis. And when you look at it and you look what is actually going on, what has changed, what has shifted in my life / my business, same question. And how do I take an appropriate action? Back to your curiosity. Thank you for that. It's like, what could I do, to use a little bit of NLP, what could I do that would be an even better response to what is factually going on right now? Not out there, not in the world, right here in my life, in my business, in my house with my spouse and children that are getting on my nerves.
Exactly what I was talking about.
Exactly. What can I do right now that would take us a step forward, be a little bit more efficient than looking at what the president has said today on the White House lawn in this press conference? And what did that do to the Dow Jones today? Gee, that's not going to change my life for today or tomorrow.
Yeah.
Not unless I'm a stockbroker. If I'm a stockbroker, that's different, right? So
we're not talking to stockbrokers, probably.
Yeah.
Why not me stockbrokers?
Right? It's awesome. So yeah.
So the way I love, Yoram, I love what you said about the breaths. I just want to jump up and down on the trampoline with you about the breaths. That's what I teach people. I literally, breaths, 3. And breathing, proper breathing. Fill up the tummy, not the chest. Breathe deep, kills the stress hormones, kills the triggering things. You like box breathing? I don't like box breathing. You know what, Martin, would that be valuable? So here's the thing, though, real quick, before we go into that, I have a question, Yoram. I have a suggestion. But both Yoram and I are talking about taking those breaths. And then the reason that Martin, I know the reason I grabbed my shades was, Yoram, you were talking about whether or not to how to look at something.
Yeah.
Right? And it's through either afraid sunglasses or love sunglasses.
What's the filter? What's the filter?
What's the filter? And so Yoram and I are sitting here screaming about breathing, and I suggest we talk about box breathing and the way that I show people how to breathe. And then Martine, the reason is because the next step is ask those questions like Martine is saying, the curiosity theory.
Yeah.
That's the practice.
You're not going to ask a question when you're in fear. You're not going to ask yourself a question when you're in fear because your limbic brain doesn't have the capacity for language.
There you go.
It's not going to ask you a question. It's just going to go, oh, fuck.
So here's
jump into that for a second. Limbic brain, the lizard brain, right? It's gonna, right? So it does one of two things. If anyone hasn't heard about it, it's a brain that's conditioned to either look at something, say, is this lunch, or look at something and say, am I becoming lunch, right? So becoming lunch, it'll do one of three things. It'll run away, fight, or freeze.
Yeah.
And I'm here to point out that we can do neither of these in the current situation. There's nowhere to run to. People ran.
I didn't think about that.
People try to run to another country. There's nowhere to run. That's
wow. Yeah.
Right? You can fight it and go, no, I'm going to go to the street and I'm going to. No, you can't really fight it.
There's a few states still trying that.
Yeah, a few of them. And the freezing part is the part where people say, okay, well, I'm going to wait for that storm to pass. And that's what I pointed before. It's like, when it's going to pass, A, we don't know how long that's going to take. And B, there's no going back to what was.
Yeah.
The new normal is going to be different. So the only thing you can do is you can take these deep breaths, and regardless of how you're taking them, what's going to happen when you do that, you take off your lizard brain hijacks. It takes the prefrontal cortex offline in order to get the processing cycles, so to speak. I'm a computer guy, so that's where I'm coming from.
Slow it down.
Yeah, it's taking the high level thinking offline in order to do that. So when we take these breaths, we're literally allowing a different kind of thinking to restart and go to your curiosity, because that is when we can respond rather than react. That's when we can ask a question of what's possible, what can we do? And so I'm so glad you brought that up. Thank you.
That's great. Yeah, that's awesome. So you breathe, you're disengaging your limbic brain, you're disengaging your reptilian brain. So you're basically saying, listen, you're not in control, and you might not be in control, but you have the opportunity to be curious and then seek control. And there are questions you don't want to ask. I mean, a question you don't want to ask is why, because that's going to throw you back often. It's just, that's one of those, questions that when a Buddha said, stop asking that question. But I love what you said. Well, first off, like I said, Yoram, you always blow me away by something you said, because I would have thought that I would never have thought that, fight, flight, or freeze, which is probably one of the basic foundations of what I teach. I teach people to, the reptilian brain, and then you go from there, that there's really no place to run. Where do you run? Yeah, like where do you run? Where do you and so even frozen doesn't work very much, because I would say because we're like frozen so much, we're like, okay, now I got to do something, right? It's like,
well, so that brings us back into the fear response.
Yeah.
Who's used to sitting silently and doing nothing for an hour at a time? Not many people. I'm not that good at that. I've done it before, but I'm slightly out of that practice a little bit. But not a lot of people are used to this freeze in place thing, and that's causing this reaction. I want to throw one little curve in here and one little sneaky thing: discernment.
Great. Okay, hold on one second. Stephen, welcome, buddy.
Stephen, what's up? Nice to meet you.
Hey, thanks for joining. Unmute you.
Absolutely. I'm trying to mute it part-time with my kids running in and out of my where I'm trying to hide. So
that's right.
Sign of the time.
That's part of That's part of what we're all going through too. So
absolutely
trying to maintain a level of professionalism while being authentic at home.
Discernment.
So what I'm saying is, like, we're talking about like a quick fight or flight response right now.
Mm-hmm.
Once you come out of that, our unconscious, I just want to remind everybody, and I'm talking about everybody watching, I'm pretty sure that everybody on here has already mastered or understands this on the call. There is the level of discernment, and that's what the curiosity theory is for. That's what questions are for, where your unconscious mind can still mess with you. Your unconscious mind can still be unconsciously causing a fear response or a fear sunglasses going on, and you're still looking at it from a place of fear, even though you're not in that oh shit state.
Yeah.
So when you think you're done breathing, breathe more.
Yeah.
Amen, brother.
Keep breathing.
Yeah, I love it. I love the discernment. So beliefs. Okay, so we know we're talking about beliefs, and then we talked about belief circles. I know, like you call it belief circles. I call it, I mean, we all have our own words for belief circles. We'll talk about belief circles real quick.
In my world, what I'm talking about, it's at a very kind of base level.
Mm-hmm.
I often am helping people set goals, and it's really easy to understand with that. For example, there's things that are inside your belief circles. There's things that are outside your belief circles. Real quick, can you brush your teeth tomorrow morning?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
That is clearly inside your belief circles. You've done it thousands of times at this point. You've probably done it hundreds of times in the bathroom where you're going to do it tomorrow morning. You've probably done it at least dozens of times using the current toothbrush and toothpaste that you're going to use tomorrow morning. So there's no question you're going to brush your teeth tomorrow morning, right?
None.
Right. Can you brush your teeth sitting in your front lawn?
Sure.
Okay. I believe you can, but how many times have you done it? How many times have you brushed your teeth? Let me get more specific.
Yeah.
Sitting on your front porch in a robe, spitting on the sidewalk. I mean, like, we can get really specific here.
Yeah. Okay.
But that would be, even though I've done it, brush my teeth, going back to Yoram's statement about change and difference. Now, obviously, this is usually when I'm talking to people about setting a goal of making $1 million this year versus talking to two people today. Inside and outside your belief circles. And there's this line right there that it's like the Great Wall of China. It's as big as the freaking Grand Canyon. But back to discernment, understanding that feeling inside you is this tiny little itty bitty thing. It's this tiny little tweak that happens, and it goes back to something as small as that, right? It's this tiny little reaction that happens inside us, because I guarantee right now, I can't see how many people are watching, but I guarantee there's a percentage of people that have goals, and they've written the goals in a way that they don't believe they can achieve them, and that is actually hurting them. So that's kind of where I go with belief circles. So
I'm going to talk my version of what you're talking about. I call it upper limits. It's kind of like, like that's as far as I think I can go, and then sometimes I'm like this, oh my God, too much, bye, and we go back under them, right? It's like, this is like we hit our head on it and we, like, bye, like that's what and so what I hear you saying is like your belief circles is like where you live inside of that. And I, just kind of hanging out with you guys, I know that like where my life actually exists is outside of those circles. Like, this is like what I know, like take for instance, brushing my teeth in the bathroom. Well, that just makes sense, but I'm like, all right, let me jump on a motorcycle and brush my teeth. It's a different experience,
but you could probably do it.
Yeah, you can do it. It's kind of a dumb thing, it's kind of, but it's okay. So I'll do it. I'll kind of give you a different version of it. So like I work at home. I have 2 offices that I can work at. And what I've been doing, what I started to do last September, is I just started to drive around and work in different places. I drive up to LA and work. Like literally, I would just drive up to LA in the morning and I'd work in LA. I'd go to Orange County. I would go to San Juan Capistrano, and I would just go find different places to work and just be in a coffee shop or somewhere. And it just expanded everything, and it what it did for me, like what it did for my belief is somehow, and I don't know, like really like how it did that. You might want to answer that. But what it did is I just had a different way that I related to like my phone calls, my work that I was doing. It shifted it all.
Yeah.
So this is
Go ahead,
one of
Yoram.
the-
Respond to
Can
that,
I
please.
say
Yeah.
something yet?
real quick, Yoram, and then I'll shut up. It's really easy to crisscross belief circles and comfort zone. Those are in my framework says those are two very different things. I just want to make sure that we're not talking about comfort zone. We're talking about what I'm talking about is belief circles. Go ahead, Yoram.
I want to connect something that you said, and the example with brushing your teeth is so awesome. I love it because here's the thing. Now let's replace the brushing your teeth. There's, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of people that if you ask them, do you believe that you can go to your office and work tomorrow? They're going to say yes. But when these people were told, now we want you to do it at home, they're going to go, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Language. It's like,
Yeah.
how am I going to do that? I don't know that I can do that. And that is because somehow they got outside of their realm of what they believe that they can do, whether or not they can work from home. And they're stuck because of that. Right? Back to the curiosity, right? They are stuck in a belief that says, I cannot, rather than ask a question, how could I? How can I? How
I
can
love that
you
example.
be productive? It
Yeah.
is so on time. Thank you for the example. I'm going to use that with your permission.
Yeah.
Oh, Yoram, we should talk, man. I have a little guided meditation I take people through to help them feel it. And it's a very small thing. Real quick, can I make a little plug, Martin?
Yeah, just keep going. Just absolutely.
Well,
This
no,
is
I mean,
important,
a
right?
plug for Yoram. What you brought up is so perfect. And one of my favorite clients is a guy named Dylan, the Mac Whisperer. He was on here earlier. I don't know.
Yeah,
if
he was on here
still is.
earlier. Yeah, I don't think he's here right now.
But you guys can scroll up in the comments and find him, and he is the guy to talk to answer that question. How do I stay focused? How do I stay productive? And how do I use technology from home? It's blowing me away. The sudden popularity of Zoom, for example.
Yeah.
Like,
Totally.
who's even mentioned Skype?
Yeah.
Like, what happened? Where'd Skype go?
Oh,
Like,
remember
seriously.
WebEx?
So one of
That's
the,
like an MP3 player now.
I'd like to jump into what you're saying. Like in the first 2 weeks of this, when your routine is so set and that routine just goes away, and all these unknowns come in there, there's a way to react, and then there's a way to just allow the situation to take you over. And I think for myself in the very beginning, I let the situation take me over. And finding those new routines, I was telling this to Martine the other day, is like, it's really about having accountability. Technology is great, but honest accountability from people that you need in your life to remind you. And that's all it is. It's like we just moved 2 millimeters to the left or the right, and we just need a reminder to get back to center.
Yeah.
And I've moved in and out of that centerpiece. I was just I haven't really had a tough time during this. I've had some acceptance in trying to understand a new normal, but last night for me was a really tough night. Just all of those unknowns. And today, like I was talking to Martine earlier before this started, I just wanted to get out. I went to Costco, I went grocery shopping, and it was literally just to see people, strangers, but people, right?
Stephen,
yeah.
What do you do?
I sell real estate, but I'm also a communication coach. Like I talk about human behavior and things of that.
Yoram, are you working from home? Were you working from home before this happened?
Oh yeah, I worked from home for a decade. In fact, I used to do IT, and I actually moved my company, let go of the office, and moved everybody home in 2010. So
here's my point. On one side of the screen, you've got it stacked up, Martine, and on the other side, Yoram and I, before this happened, my lifestyle has changed. The only thing that's changed is I go out less. It's changed nothing. My meetings, where I work, where I'm sitting in front of this green screen, nothing has changed for me. Yet, Stephen, I feel you, man. I did the same thing. For the first 2 weeks, I've been cocky popped. I don't know what the right word is, right? And Martine, the way you were describing where we're getting our information, that's what hit me. Because I've caught myself reacting, wanting to be hungry for more information to understand this change in this crisis.
Yeah.
So, Stephen, I just want you to know, man, I'm with you, dude. I understand it. I feel you.
So when we talk about reacting, then let's go to that's the second part. Which is attitude. So reaction is an attitude. And I say it's an attitude, and you could say it's an action, but I say it's an attitude. And the reason I say it's an attitude is because we have a choice. But most people don't understand that they have a choice when it comes to reaction. So the way I define reaction, the way we define it in the curiosity theory, is an automatic response that is similar to a response that you had in the past that is triggered and generated by what's happened to you in the past. So the reaction, like when we react, like somebody says something to us, go, oh, you meant to insult me or something, like that, like you say something to somebody and the reaction to you is like, what a jerk. It's typically negative. It's hard. It's like when we have a reaction like, yeah, good job. Thanks a lot. We don't really call that a reaction. We usually we save reaction for things that are negative. Like it's not like, that's not positive. That's not like yum. That's more like yuck. So, that is first off, it starts with our beliefs. And then those reactions are immediately connected to our attitude. Like, how are we feeling? What is the attitude we have about the person that we're interacting with in that moment, and which has to do with history as well, right?
I wanted to jump in and kind of layer on that.
Yeah,
I'm hoping you tell us about last night, brother. Right. I'm hoping to hear. Like, I didn't mean to interrupt. I wanted to hear more about last night, and I bet you can talk straight to that right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, last night was I was on like a social Zoom call with friends of mine from Canada. That's where I'm from originally, and it was that kind of interaction with all these people marveling at the fact that, hey, we can all be on a Zoom call together, but then the fact that we're not together, right? So it was kind of like that mixed bag. And the one thing that I wanted to read, just super quick, was again, as a reminder to whoever is watching or when this gets reposted, but the 5 stages of grief or loss, because this is what everybody's going through, right? The denial and isolation, anger, then bargaining, then depression, then acceptance. And it's amazing because I don't think it's just it isn't like one of those where you're just systematically going through it. You're going back and forth through all of those,
in and out of it. Is what you're saying? You're like, boom,
But
and then you're marinating in it.
To Martine's point, however, so the back and forth part happens when we are unconscious of the reaction. And when I say reaction, I'm talking about the bodily reaction. So I have a different framework for reaction than Martine, but if we're getting ready to step from step 3 to 4, but something scary out there, there's the body reaction that might knock us back to 2, anger. I think that's right? 2 is anger. I can't remember.
I'll tell you, I got it all right here.
Yeah, I love it, man.
Anger. Yeah.
Say it again.
Denial and isolation is the first one. Anger is the second one. Bargaining is the third. Depression, and then acceptance.
So bargaining before that's interesting.
Bargaining, that's where everybody's at right now. Most people, we're in this bargaining situation with ourselves, and that's what I'm talking about. The reaction, our body reacts, and that brings us to the breath to keep us in the curiosity.
Well, I think it's
coming from that place of love.
It's unprecedented, Clay, with the amount that's changing for people at one time, right? It's not like one thing's happening; everything's being affected. Everything, That's what
Yoram was saying.
I was talking to one of my clients yesterday, and again, my primary is I sell real estate, and this guy's from New Zealand. He's relocating here because he's got a high-level position, but he's on lockdown in New Zealand. U.S. consulate, embassies closed, can't do a notary signing, don't know when New Zealand's coming out of lockdown, don't know when the U.S. will let people fly back in that aren't green card holders or residents. And he was telling me he lost almost 7 figures in a transaction that he was a part of. And it's like, and I'm not expressing that in, hey, he's losing around $1 million. It's just that everybody on every front is being hit with different things at the same time. And I don't think that's ever happened. Maybe, you know, for some people, yeah, that happens in small fragments, right? But this is everybody. It's like,
I agree.
You know.
Here's the way I say it: size matters.
Well,
I'm going to leave it at that.
it's funny that you mentioned that, and you know, some people are gonna right now when I'm gonna say that, they're gonna go, okay, he's nuts, and they're gonna go away. But yesterday I reviewed the history of the Spanish flu, and first of all, it gave me some perspective, because this like barely 102 years ago, and we're talking about 50 million people dead out of 2 billion people on the globe.
Wow.
And think that you could be fine in the morning and dead by nighttime, right? But this is also, I mean, when you have this place where everybody is affected, right? Then you have, I talked earlier on about crisis. We got to remember that, again, how do you react to a crisis? You can react on one of the 3 fears, that fear responses or reactions. But when you when you go back into your body, when you breathe, when you get present, then you also can recall a belief that I would like to offer everybody watching this, that a crisis can be viewed as an opportunity.
Yeah.
And that is the point where we can pivot. And I believe we can pivot anywhere on the scale, from individually to globally as humanity. And there's so many pivots, and I'm sure everybody has their own favorite pivot, but there's so many pivots that we can do as humanity. But it all hinges on being able to get present to the fact that, okay, I am in crisis. I'm going through these steps of grief. This is going to allow me an opportunity. Which opportunity is it? Right back to the curiosity, to the question. No change is ever going to come out of answers.
Yeah.
Changes come out of questions. Right.
I was like, what do you mean no change? I was like, no, the answer. Yeah, all change comes from answers, but you have to ask the question first.
Right.
So
the funny thing about reaction is, if we look at the dictionary, it's one thing. But again, it's a kind of a condition in our own circles. People in personal development, people in the seminar world, people are in this day and age. It became so evident when I remember that quote that says, and Swindle said, life is 10% what's happening to you and 90% how you react to it. And the personal coach in me, just went right out and said, why does he say react? This is fear responses. No, it's respond. Like, wait a second. He said it 50 years ago. React was perfectly fine in the context of communications back then.
Yes.
It's a perfectly fine word. And so I would like to offer you, Martin, that if we are to make the distinction, there's a third word that you didn't use, and that was a reflex. So what we call today a reaction is more a reflexive I'm running out of words, but a reflexive response to threat, to fear. That's what we talk about when we talk today about reactions, dictionary-wise, they're all the same.
I love it. Well, and so when you said the word distinction, so what we have the opportunity to do, I think, just based on what you were saying, is we have the opportunity to look at our beliefs, look at our attitudes, look at our responses. You said reflexes and our reactions, and what we need for that is the word that starts everything, which is awareness. And we can bring in an awareness to whatever's going on, like. And if we have to be conscious of something, we have to actually have to become aware and then start noticing things. There's no opportunity if there's no awareness, because we don't even see it. It's not even, we don't even, it's missing. That's even missing.
Yeah, because there's a cycle.
Go ahead.
And the cycle, we all kind of heard about it. We believe something that kind of controls our attitudes towards a situation that we're in, which is going to decide what we're going to do. But here's the kicker. What we're going to do will create a result that is based on what we're going to do. And our mind is going to come in and go, aha, I told you, right?
Yeah.
And it's going to use whatever result. It's going to look at it with a filter and use it to justify the belief.
Yes.
And now you're in a vicious cycle.
That's what I thought you were describing. Yeah. So because what we're looking for, and it's what we know what to look for. We only, like, if we haven't distinguished something, we just look for what we've already distinguished. So if all we know to do in the morning is brush your teeth, then you don't know about flossing until somebody brings your awareness to flossing. And then you then have that as an awareness, and then you then have the choice, right? You have the choice now, if you choose to choose that, and that would be a reflex reaction or response based on your beliefs and based on your attitudes. Kind of all comes together, right? That you can now choose to do something. But the tough thing is, and this is what I think people don't yet know, because they're just blind to it, that they have a choice, and then they don't understand what choice is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the tough thing. It's like, no, I know what choice is. Well, you don't know what choice is. You react as though you're choosing. You're really just avoiding pain, which is not necessarily a choice. So it's an avoidance, Go ahead, Stephen.
I think part of it is a word that Yoram used earlier, which was the reflex, right?
Yeah.
Again, it's so much of what we do that we think is instinctual isn't necessarily instinctual. It's just what we know how to do in certain moments because we haven't retrained ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the most fascinating part about this time, this unprecedented time in our generation, and for generations to come, because we're going to be talking about this, this isn't going to go away, but it's just, how do you respond, and what was your initial response? And then can you build a filter? I always call it the Justin Timberlake, Janet Jackson response, right? The live TV is not live TV anymore. It's 5 seconds delayed. So, I mean, if you can get to a point where all of a sudden your initial reflex is something that you can catch, I think that's where all of this new learning starts for us as we figure out these new normals, how we respond, not just in these situations, but it's something that you can take forth for the rest of your life. Because anything, like, the body's going to respond with anything that it knows how to do if that's the way it's been trained. And right now, with so much fear going on and so much unknown, we're having all of these responses. A lot of people with depression. There's a lot of people that are home alone that are not used to it, right? That also suffer from depression. And I'm not saying this is easy for anybody, because I know a lot of people that suffer, unfortunately, from depression. And then it's just that cycle. But, is this an opportunity to retrain a brain, and what can that do for people? And I think just finding ways to rid ourselves of our initial reflexes that we've been so unaware of, because we could just go on and do whatever after, right? We were able to do that. That's one of my daughters in the hallway. But
it's a reflex.
Did you move? Did you know? I'm used to that sound. But it's like, in all of this right now.
Oh, that was the other daughter.
I think that's the coolest opportunity.
Whoa.
I don't know what's going on there. This is
I
music.
think Martine's getting reactive with the camera work over
The
there.
reflex.
Well,
You want to be away.
the
You don't
modem?
want to be under him anymore. But I think it's fascinating in how we have an opportunity to catch how we respond to things. I think that if we literally pay attention, like seriously be in the moment, I think it's going to be fascinating for a lot of people to see how they react, because you can't run. Like, that's the thing. Like, we're always able to run. You can't run.
And like Yoram said, we can't even fight. You can't even fight anymore.
You have to face it.
Who are you going to fight? You're going to fight this germ?
So, Martine, you remember one of the things we started with, I don't know if it got on the call or not, but I wanted to mention domestic violence.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention.
Let's talk about that then.
Well, it's the same thing what Stephen was saying with the depression. People are finding themselves in this unusual situation, and one of the responses is fight. And what you were talking about, Stephen, with running, I understood as distracting. You couldn't distract yourself from the actual pain, right?
Yeah.
So here we are stuck at home, and these calls are going up. Suicide hotlines calls are going up, and domestic violence and domestic abuse calls and help calls are going up. That's happening now.
That's just a fact. That's an absolute fact. Yeah.
I just want to, and Stephen and Yoram and Martine, I'm glad I'm thrilled to be on here with you guys. And I want to ask a deep question.
Yeah.
So one of the first conversations I had with a new client, I literally, and Yoram, I want to thank you especially for the word reflex. You guys saw me disappear a minute ago. I wrote a few things down that got me just the way I'm going to label some stuff. Maybe I'm going to work on that.
I'm adding that too. That's right.
But one of the things I show people is I use your blink, your reflective or reactive action, reflective action of a blink as an example of breaking down how the brain works. And I start with, hey, I'm going to poke you in the eye. Obviously I'm not, but I'm going to poke you in the eye. And then I freeze this moment right now. And I freeze this moment right now. And I break down now into nanoseconds. I take the photons from my fingertip, the photons from my shirt. I put them into your eye. We go into the cones and the rods. We go into the synapses and what's going on physically inside the brain based on the latest research.
Hey, real quick. Hey, Mikey, thanks for hanging out with us, brother. I really appreciate it, man. Love you.
Hey, Mikey. And I explain how now is actually 10 to the minus 3 to 10 to the minus 9 seconds ago. So that's one of the ways I do it, Stephen, is I remind myself that what I think is happening right now, it's kind of like the delay on Facebook Live. I've got the Facebook Live up and I'm doing this, and that's not going to happen for a few seconds, right?
Like 20 seconds later, yeah.
That's really happening. So that's one of those ways. Yoram, I use my breath to slow things down and get into that moment, get into this moment. I really value what you just said there, Stephen. Thank you.
Absolutely, Clay. Just to your point, super quick. There's a book that on Audible that I've listened to probably 12 times now. I'm listening to it for the 13th. It's called Inner Engineering by Sadhguru. And,
it sounds very much like Buddha's brain.
I haven't heard that one, but it's fascinating. And in every time I hear it, I translate it differently. Like the examples come across differently to me. But the one example was what you're talking about with the eye. What he was talking about is what we see. Is it really happening outside of us? Because whatever we see has to be reflected and then processed, it's all starting here.
Yeah.
Right. So even what we're seeing is not external; it's all internal. Like it's all being processed inside of us. When you start messing with that, I think I almost fell over when I first started thinking about that. Like counting stars in the sky. Like how many are there? It's just like
that's right.
It's so now connect that to all 5 senses. I had an experience. Let's go here. I had an experience that connected this so deeply. So we're talking about earlier, Stephen, you missed it. Talked about motorcycle riding and how just a flinch on the throttle can kill you, and that's a reaction or a reflexive action. like unconscious, roll off, and then you become conscious and you roll back on. Well, I experienced something from a medical professional where she changed the wiring between my brain and my arm somehow. I'm going to over exaggerate this, but basically, if you think I'm going to move my arm up, right? You're going to push up. Well, she made it where when I thought push up, my arm went down.
Whoa.
I'm exaggerating. That's not what physically happened. But she did some things that caused, like, the reality of it was I have an injury in my left shoulder. And right now I can only go so high. When I go have a session with her, she clicks her fingers a couple times and touches me in a certain spot. All of a sudden I have no pain. And I asked her to explain that, and we went deep, and I did the research on her teachings, and there's only like a few hundred people in the world that are doing what she's doing, and they all are medical professionals at a much deeper level than I am. And what it comes down to is this reflexive behavior in our bodies. It's controlled by gray matter that is down in our spine. So it's so much more secret and embedded that it can't be in our conscious brain. I'm with you on the stars in the sky. I love that. So please learn to breathe. Everybody that's watching this, please just breathe a lot. Yeah, get in the moment.
So I hear you guys tapping into action. I hear you guys tapping into the third part, which was action. So beliefs, attitudes, and action. And one of the things you were saying is it's a tough thing. It might be a tough thing for people to swallow. I'm going to kind of, because I didn't want to really talk about domestic violence. It's and like we talked about that before, and I'm good. I'm good with that. And I thought it was it's just tough conversation for some people. But the action of violence, let's just say the action of violence, whether it's like, yelling at somebody or physically doing something, that's a strategy for something. That is like it's an action, which is a strategy. Like we're trying to accomplish something with a strategy. It's a bad strategy to beat people up. But what is the attitude and what's the belief that's before those two things that has us then say that the only strategy I have to get my needs met is to scream at somebody, to yell at somebody, to hit somebody, to batter somebody. It all starts with beliefs. It all starts with what do you believe, and then what are your attitudes, and then how does that funnel into actions? Because people that have, there's a lot of people, like mostly people have a belief that it's not good to hit your wife.
Yet
it's just not a belief that most people don't have an attitude to do that.
Look at any domestic situation.
Yeah.
Right? Like the murder. Let's say my cousin kills my uncle or whatever, right? Whatever.
Yeah.
Murders, all the unsolved murders out there, the percentage of those is tiny because the majority of things that happen, the cops get there and they're like, the dude's holding a knife going, I can't believe I just killed him. I'm so sorry. I can't believe I just did that. There's no question on who did it or why. It's because they got into a fight over who can drink a beer the fastest.
Yeah.
Or something, right?
Yeah.
So we're not talking about a
That's in Alabama.
You think it's just in Alabama, homie? Really? You're in California, really? Okay, I'm sorry, you're right. Really?
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide. Oh goodness, that was fun.
All over the world, I can promise you that.
I know.
So I completely lost it.
I'm sorry. So you're talking about somebody standing there with a knife, having gotten caught.
It's that It's not a conscious plan.
Yeah.
There are very few people that say, I'm going to hit my wife so she makes me a better sandwich in 3 weeks when I go to work.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's not it's and here's what it comes down to, Martine. And I'd love to hear the feedback from everybody. It's fear of death. I can connect easily. I've witnessed it. Arguably, I've abused Tara verbally, emotionally.
Sure.
I guarantee we've been angry enough at each other where we freaking wanted to hit each other, right? I know I have. There's just no question about it.
And nobody really has the courage to talk about it at that level either. So thank you.
What does it come down to?
What does it come? Say the question again.
What does it? There's three questions. Is it going to kill me? Can I eat it? Can I reproduce with it? And I'm sorry, it comes down to how this situation, my anger comes down to my fear of death. You will be hard pressed to find anyone angry about anything that I can't ask why enough to, and ultimately we'll get to because I'm afraid I'll die.
Okay, so what you're saying is ultimately it's that. It might not show up on the surface. That's kind of what I was saying earlier. It might not show up on the surface, but deep, that's what it is. So let's
on the surface, it's just being a smart ass.
Okay, so let's go one level deep below that then. So on the surface, it's smart ass. On the second level is, I don't like the way you make my sandwiches, or that's the way I thought it was. Let me give you an example. So when I was little, I was going to get in a fight with this guy named, I forget the guy's name now. He wanted to beat me up. He was a lot bigger than I was, and his name was Victor. And he wanted to beat me up, and I was afraid. And one day I go home, and my neighbor across the street, who I hung out with all the time, he was an older guy, and he just kind of sat out there and drank coffee and smoked cigarettes. He's a little Navy guy, just a great friend of mine. And he would just notice something weird about me, and he said, "What's going on?" And I said, "This guy named Victor wants to fight me." And he's like, "Sounds like he's a bully." And I go, "He is a bully." He told me, there's a way you handle bullies. I'm in 7th grade. There's a way you handle bullies. And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Bullies don't want to be hurt. Like a bully does not want you to be hurt. That's why they're bully. And as soon as you punch a bully, they'll cry and run away." So I was like, okay. And it was 7th grade. This guy's probably like 40 something years old. Like he's like he's Yoda to me. Right. So like Yoda tells me what to do, I go do it. Right. So the next day I go to school. Victor still wants to fight me. I'm going, okay, let's fight. Let's meet on the football field. We go on the football field. Victor comes up to me. I beat him up. I'm like, oh, cool. So for me, my immediate belief was, don't mess with me. Like I can beat up a bully. I can and now when I learned as a habit was don't fuck with me. Like my way of people messing with me is to destroy them. Let's go into my marriage now. So when Yvette decides to, what I think is mess with me, I go in destroy mode. And I did that until I realized I was doing that. So like you said, Clay, with you and Tara, it's like we get into these situations, we get into these battles, we get into these fights that we don't even know we're fighting, and we don't even know where they come from. We don't even know what beliefs until we start to become aware. And then if we're lucky enough, we're going to go back and look and say, where did this whole thing come from? And then we can attach, attach the dots and then figure it all out and go, wow.
Now, now all you need to do is connect the two of them, because what you experienced as you grew up with Victor shaped that part of you which we call an ego, right? And ego,
Okay, got it.
Right? And without making ego the villain that we typically make the ego in some circles, it was part of your ego. And there you are with your wife. Your ego becomes afraid to die. I'm serious.
Right.
I'm serious about
Dude,
it.
Let's if we now we're in. I love where you're at, Yoram. Apply that to today. That change. We are in a situation where it is blatantly obvious that the person I am tomorrow is going to be different than the person I am today to everybody. That ego death, the egoic death. I agree. I'm so with you, man.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Keep going.
Just going back to your domestic violence situation, your ego finds itself afraid to die because your ego in that space is the belief is who I am is you fuck with me, I kill you.
Yeah.
Right.
And it becomes, and it's automatic.
Exactly. So I want to suggest something. I don't know how helpful it will be, but it is extremely helpful. We hear so much. Thank you, Hal Elrod, the morning miracle, and all of that. We hear so much about the reflection in the morning, about the meditation and the journaling. What we do not hear about so much, and it's so important in taking care of our reflexes, is the meditation at night. In other words, the debrief. In other words, that time is like, who takes time at night to sit down and go over their day and go, this is what happened. This is how I respond. This is how I responded. This was my reflex. Why did I do that? How can I respond differently? Because I promise you, you do that 3 times, you recognize 3 times that you responded in a way that you don't really like over something. The next time you develop that sliver, that little tiny second of opportunity to go, whoa, I'm doing this again. Let me do something else today. And that could help domestic violence as well. I've never actually coached a case of domestic violence, but I would have to think that could be helpful. The debrief at the end is at least of the same importance than the visualization and planning your day and creating your day in the morning, I think.
I think so.
Yeah,
I just want to share with you what I do. So this is my morning brief. I use Brendan Burchard's book. I don't know. Do you use Brendan Burchard's, Clay?
I use parts of it. I don't use the whole, like,
my day, and then
pull the parts I like
over here. I call it my evening journal. So it looks like, what did I really appreciate about today? And then there's, look and see, was I clear? Was I on target? Was I meeting my goals? That kind of stuff. And I think you're right.
Your habits are so solid.
What's that?
I was just saying your habits are so solid.
Thanks. Appreciate that. A long way to go.
One step farther, Martin.
Yeah.
Yes, look at what happened today. What are you grateful that happened today? What were your results for you? Yes. But also take every single thing that you go, well, I wish that didn't turn out that way, or I wish I didn't do it this way. And take the time to go, this is what happened. This is how I felt. This is what I did. And the way this works is funny, because basically by the time you write it the 3rd or the 5th time, you go, okay, well, that's a pattern.
Yeah.
And you shifted that moment that you realized it's a pattern. You bought yourself the ability to respond differently, and that sliver of time, that split second, to perhaps see it coming.
That's why I love that. That's why all the awareness is important, the meditation, the journal, the gratitude, the debrief, the morning. It becomes, I hear what you're saying, is it really becomes routines and habits. And then those bring awareness. Then we start to notice things, and then we start to believe different things. Our actions then change, and then results that we produce then shift.
The moment you ask, what else can I do in the moment, and you try something else and it works, it's done.
I love it.
It's called changing a life.
Yeah.
So let's go. Let's finish up, and how about if we finish up by talking about breathing? Because I think that really is like probably the first, probably the most important, and probably the most basic part of all of this. And I know that I've had that conversation with all 3 of you. I know that there was a point where Stephen would call me and he would just celebrate his breathing. It was like, because Stephen and I we've been accountability partners for about 9 months now, and our results are my personal results are crazy. And we have a call twice a week. We have a Monday call and we have a Friday call. And we make promises, and then we review our promises. We call it stop, change, start. And and I know that in this process, I know Stephen has told me about his breathing and the thing is about breathing. I'll say this and I'll open it up for you guys. The thing is about breathing. Once you start breathing, it's like you don't stop. It's like it's because and that's kind of weird. Like, yeah, you got to stop breathing. That's stupid, Martine. But really, like breathing. But once you're consciously breathing, once you're actually breathing like consciously, and you breathe and allow your belly to come out. And what I noticed the other day was a friend of mine that I was talking about breathing, and she was like breathing and like her chest would pop out. I go, no, your belly, let your belly go out. She goes, oh no. Like she didn't want to breathe and let her belly come out and she's skinny.
I've been shocked, Martine. I had an experience with a woman that I thought was in this personal development thing, and I looked up to her and I respected her. And she was having a down night, and her and I sat and chatted over a pizza in San Diego and at an event, and we chatted and as I'm talking to her, it became obvious she wasn't breathing right. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Like she was doing that same thing where she was sucking it in the gut. But yeah.
This person said the reason that she didn't want to breathe that way because she didn't want to look fat. Like, that's really interesting. Like, I go, just let your stomach come out. Well, no.
That's a belief.
No, I don't want my stomach to come out. And then, so finally I convinced her to like, let her stomach come out. And she's like, oh, wow. Oh, that's breathing.
It's called breathing.
It's like, great. So let's talk about breathing. Like, what's your philosophy on that? How does that help?
I mean, you had one, or Stephen.
Go ahead, Stephen.
I just wanted to share a story, couple stories, and it's really personal about me, but and especially breathing. So in my family, growing up, my parents, my brother, Yoram, you're from Israel, my mom's Ashkenazi, Moroccan, so also Jewish, and let's just say our kitchen could be a powder keg at any time, the way we would react. And then it was all done, and it's back to normal. You get it out. Right? But those kinds of responses, again, I'm going to bring reflex back into this because those would be a reflex that would be normal in situations. And now back to Clay talking about domestic violence, not violence per se, but when I would respond in certain ways with my wife, she grew up in a very civilized, quiet, normal discussion table, which never existed in my world. And I hope it never really does, like,
those aren't any fun.
Right? Little animated.
Yeah.
And so because of the way I would respond, my wife asked me to go to anger management. And I did, and it was interesting because I had to put my ego away when I went there because I'm like, I don't need to be here. What the hell am I here for? But it was very fascinating because what came up was breathing. And it was amazing that they centered it around breathing because what we were talking about, part of the ego with letting our belly out when we're taking a deep, deep breath, for a lot of people, including myself at times, you feel self-conscious around it. I don't want that person to think I'm fat. It's just breath, right? So I'm just showing all these connections that we don't even think about. And I was at this class, and what are they studying? They're talking about breath. And then what does breath do? And how does breath stop and stabilize the way we start to get worked up? And if you really pay attention to where you are physically when you're angry, you're not breathing. It's very, very shallow breath.
Yes.
You're letting everything take over. Go ahead, Clay.
Has anybody studied
Wim Hof method?
Wim Hof.
I think
I'm big time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Studied. Okay.
Yeah, not studied, but it's just amazing when you take it layers deeper. And let's just say that I never really paid attention to how I used to get angry, like how it all just kind of went through a cycle. And then would surface, and then there would be a response and reaction. And again, for me, I just go back to the kitchen where I grew up. It all comes out, and then it all would go away. but not in these settings, right? Not in a new setting where somebody didn't grow up in my environment. And ever since, I started really paying attention to the breath and just allowing the breath to just keep you in the state that you're in, as opposed to losing your breath and going into a different state, because anger is a state, like how you are in that state. So it's really, really fascinating. And again, I'm sharing anger management. I wasn't abusive, there wasn't hitting, but it was verbal and the way we would respond, right? But it all focused, their primary was breathe. And that's what we get to do, because we tie it to so many things. Mm-hmm. How do we look? My belly's coming out. Somebody's going to see me this way. How am I holding my image? And we're tying all of these things to our physiology. It's amazing.
I love how you brought this to the kitchen and what we grew up with versus what's happening now. And back to Yoram talking about changes. Like when I grew up, I used to go to the woods and get my own switches and get spanked. And if I tried to do that with my child today, I don't have a child today. I'd probably be hauled away, or at least in a little bit of trouble, right?
CPS, bros. CPS, Child Protective Services.
There you go. I don't know, because I don't have a kid that age, but it's these differences, and we're maturing as a race, and we're maturing as a civilization. One quick little asterisk with this stuff, when we talk about breathing, I think you'll all agree with this. If Stephen, your wife, came home and said, "Hey, I'm having an affair and I want to keep having an affair with 3 people," you might react because of the feeling and the beliefs that you have. And nobody's saying change your feelings or your belief. It's just, you don't have to express them or right. Like Tara is very worried about this. When I ask her, she does not like it when I use the safe word of, "Hey, take a breath." Because if she's a little bit upset, the last thing she wants is me telling her what to do.
As a command, yeah.
Right. And she feels threatened because she has also expressed that she feels threatened because she thinks I'm trying to change how she feels.
Yeah.
So nobody's saying change how you feel, right? I just want to make sure we all got that buy-in. It's just, but that breath slows it down. I'm with you. I love it, Stephen.
I want to share something with that. When in the curiosity theory, what we do is we distinguish, we separate how we express ourselves. Like, I feel threatened. Like, there's no ability to feel threatened. You may feel pressure. And you talk about emotions. You ask me often. You ask me, Clay, when we started working together, is
how's it feel?
No. How do you actually feel? Like, what's the feeling? Like, what's the physical? Oh, well, my stomach's tight or my shoulders are tight. So the tough thing about language, language is all we have. I mean, we don't have anything other than language to express ourselves or to understand what's going on, because everything is interpreted through language. And yet our language that we have is very, very powerful and very useful. And it's also used incorrectly so often. When we say I feel threatened, and like, what does that mean? Like, I feel threatened. Like, it might mean I feel scared. My interpretation is that you're threatening me. And I'm not, and I'm kind of literal with things, and that kind of drives people crazy. However, when you start to break things up like that, we start to actually experience language differently, and we can become more effective in language. And that's what we teach in the curiosity theory, is that how, when we're talking to people, we can start to understand when people are saying things, because we often use language in a way to express ourselves, but we're not using language correctly to express ourselves. So curiosity gives us the ability to, like, listen and be curious about what someone's saying and what do they mean by what they're saying. And the value of that is because if someone says they're feeling threatened, this is just an example. It's not the truth for Tara, but it's like you could be curious and say, so what is that? So what's the feeling you're having? Like, I'm scared, I'm tense, and then when you start to identify what happens, just like breath, is you actually become present in the moment. You settle down and you become present in the moment. But being commanded to settle down, or it could be a command, that really hardly ever works, because when someone tells me to calm down, that usually, it's kind of like that, it's like, that's just my quick reaction. Now, going through the curiosity theory and teaching that, like when someone says settle down, I'm really curious about what they mean. Like, how am I showing up that you're asking me to be a different human being than I'm being in the moment? So go ahead, Yoram.
But isn't it dependent on who you talk to, right?
Absolutely. Everybody's different. Absolutely.
Right? If I would look at my wife Shifra, and she's angry, and I would tell her to take a breath, right? Now, if she's angry at me, it's rather dangerous to tell somebody to try to coach somebody who's angry at you. That's
rather dangerous.
Wrong relationship, wrong timing.
Yeah.
However, if she's gonna be angry at I don't know, the service provider, right? Somebody else, any third party, then in that moment, you could become, or I could become, in this example, a moderating factor, right? I could say, hey, right? And moreover, if you have a conversation ahead of time and say, let's have this code word, which is called let's take a breath, and really mean let's take a breath, literally, let's breathe, then I think that is the highest probability of that comment to work.
Yes.
In the moment.
Yes.
It's not foolproof. It's not 100%. It's not going to work in all cases. And I know when she's angry with me, I have work to do. And, I disengage from the situation because my fear response at that moment is run away. But.
And mine's what happened. Remember what happened with Victor? Jump up. that's mine, right?
Yeah.
She's going to kill you.
Exactly. I'm not going to be the one that dies in this fight,
Exactly.
I love that. So yes, it does matter who you're with and what they're going through in any instant. Every different situation shifts for them as well. Like you said, it could be the Cox cable guy. And then you say, hey, honey, breathe. Oh, I forgot. And we talk about attitudes, our beliefs, attitudes, and actions. And our belief immediately, it just automatically tells us what our attitude is going to be and allows us to be in action about that. If our belief is something in that moment that you're being a jerk and you're attacking me, then the attitude is going to be that of that. It's going to be that attitude that is correlate with that belief, and the action or reaction or response or reflex is going to also connect to that. They're all connected.
And that's because you have a choice. You could choose 100 attitudes and correlate them to that one belief.
Yeah.
Which goes again to conditioning.
Yeah.
It goes again to if you can get yourself to do the debrief at night and go, this is what I felt. This is what I felt about what I felt.
Yeah.
Which is the attitude, and this is what I've done, and start recognizing, because the patterns is recognizing pattern is such a powerful tool in reconditioning.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like you made those agreements, right? Real quick, Clay. So it's like if you make an agreement that we're going to use this word, and then when it shows up, then we use that word. It didn't work out as good as it would. I thought it was going to work out, but then we debrief and go, you remember when I did use a word? This is what I tried. Okay, let's try to use that the next time. And then, like you said, then you condition yourself and you create patterns that when the word comes up, sometimes you have no negative attitude. Sometimes you just go, oh, cool. Yeah, that's the word. Okay, I better breathe. You become part of a team or however you decide to put that together, however it shows up for you. I love that.
So one thing I'd like to throw out real quick is the team concept and coronavirus your intimate relationships, your friendships, everything. All we can do is take responsibility for ourselves. We can't impact how someone else feels. We can do things that hopefully will make her, in this example, feel loved and safe. We can do like Stephen was given the stories of his wife and his backgrounds. his training and conditioning and her training and conditioning were different. So him doing something that say, hey, I think I'll do this and make her feel loved. It's like the 5 love languages, right? And she doesn't hear that way.
Yeah.
So all we can do is take responsibility for ourselves. And I'd like to offer a really, that moment that we're talking about, that breath, the curiosity theory. It's I have a very simple phrase that I share with people. Martini, I think you might know where I'm going. And it cracks me up. You remember Linda?
Yeah.
My clients that I've been working with for months and years, we still get into these conversations. And at the end of the call, it's like, so what you're telling me, Martine, is if it does not feel good, there's another way to see it or do it. So that's what I've adopted, this awareness. We keep talking about awareness.
Yeah.
Well, awareness of what? Awareness in this moment, right here, right now. Do I feel good or anything but good? Not good.
Yeah.
And if I feel anything but not good, if I feel anything other than good, something's not right. Even if Tara's yelling at me, even if my internet's crashing in the middle of the most important sales call of my life, even if UPS and Amazon stop delivering right now, right? Like,
don't say that.
It doesn't matter. If it does not feel good, there's another way to do it, or there's another way to see it.
And curiosity to me is the way. Step back, be curious, take a breath.
That's exactly, I wanted to feed it right there. Yeah. My awareness, do I feel whenever anything's going down, breath, how does it feel? Is it good or not good? Not good? Why? I start going into the curiosity theory.
Yeah.
Immediately. How could I see this? What's going on? Yeah.
There's one thing I just wanted to say in my closing. It sounds like we're going to wrap up, but all of us obviously have done personal development, right? All 4 of us.
Yes.
And, we work and we continue to work on ourselves. But what I wanted to say in Yoram's talk about debriefing at night, a lot of people are afraid to debrief, right? Because now you're facing yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm only saying that because, again, for the 4 of us, it's easier to say these things because we've faced ourselves. We've done digging.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, when you start to do the digging and you start to notice your own personal patterns, don't beat yourself up. This is just my advice to the listeners out there. Don't beat yourself up because we've all been through it. Like, everybody has to go through it.
Yeah.
In order to find your way through it. And the initial thing that we all have are our own patterns, our own reflexes. It's just who we are. It makes us who we are initially, right? This is how we form ourselves. So as you do start to maybe surge in emotion, as you think about, I'm not good enough, I'm useless, I'm not lovable, whatever starts to come up through your head, we've all been through it. Every single one of us. And it doesn't mean that we still don't go through it. We're just quicker at getting out of it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's the truth. So, like, as you start to face yourself and as you start to see yourself for how maybe the world sees you, or how close people that are close to you see you, and they call you certain things, right? And you don't like those things. There's a reason. It's because that's part of your pattern. Mm-hmm. But it is doable to break through it. It is doable to recreate. It's all doable. It just takes work, and that work is emotional.
Beautiful.
But it's not long-lasting and forever. So I just wanted to put that out there because a lot of people are afraid to truly reflect.
That's awesome, Stephen. That's beautiful. That's probably sums it all up.
I'm still afraid to do it every night.
Right?
Yeah.
It's again the ego afraid to dying.
But now we're being honest.
100.
Right? See, I think the part that gets away from people like us, and I'm not saying we're different or special, but people like us that are bonding together and having these conversations, is that we're not also showing our own vulnerabilities, which is what Yoram said. I'm still afraid to face it. It's just a truth. There's nobody that's perfect that's on this call. It's impossible. Talk to our spouses or
Yeah.
close to us, right?
Or ourselves.
Right.
Stephen,
Or
I love what
ourselves.
you said. I love how you said that. My metaphor for that is the gym. It's like, and I want to go back to if it does not feel good. And so when you're dealing with the outside, girlfriend or Martine giving me that scowling look, shut the hell up, we got to get off of here today.
No, we're
If
going to
it
finish
does-
up with something. Keep
If
going,
it does
brother.
not feel good, that's one thing. That's out there. But Stephen was taking it inside.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. I'm with everybody on here. I'm scared to death to take my meditation to the next level. I'm scared of it. I'm scared to journal sometimes. I'll be honest. It's like there's questions prompts that I'm avoiding those questions, right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna journal about my goals. I'm gonna write
Yeah.
my goals over and over, and I'm gonna
Right.
avoid those questions.
I'm going to write about the easy stuff, the stuff that
Right.
makes me feel good, right?
If it does
What
not
about
feel good, I'm doing it wrong. Go to the gym. If you do a bench press in the gym and you do it you're physically doing it perfect. You've got the perfect right amount of weight for you to do the right thing in the gym. It's still tearing your muscles. It's physically hurting you. But you've programmed yourself to look at the result of, I want the bulging biceps and curls get girls. So I'm going to hurt myself to get the result I want. Right? Don't they? Isn't that the saying? Isn't that the same? There you go,
Going to
Steve.
Alabama.
I saw that, Steven.
Right.
That's not LA thing.
I'm going to Alabama first. That's the first place
That's
I'm
a
going.
SoCal thing so much. But
I know. I bet.
so I'm jumping on you, Steven. Yes, with the personal development. Yeah, I love what you said.
That's beautiful, guys. We could talk about so much. There is a conversation that was here, and we talked, and Yoram started on it, and I'd like to say, what I'd like to do it this week, and I'm going to kind of set the conversation up really quick, and then, it has to do with ego. It has to do with our ego that was once a defender, and the kind of like the part of our subconscious that tried to avoid like danger and all that, could become the part of our conscious and subconscious that then works with us, like to achieve what we want to achieve. Are you guys with me on that? So for me, what I found is that I found, and I'm going to invite you guys to have another conversation about this sometime this week, and we'll work out a time. And I'd like to do this, all four of us.
I'm not busy.
That's right. I ain't got shit to do. Except for Clay, he works all the time. He actually does the same work that he was doing before. So.
You know what, Martine? The answer to this question is I've got very fixed work windows.
Cool. And so the conversation I'd like to have next would be how we take the ego, which dominated us and kind of like informed us and kept us afraid, to becoming the partner of us. To become the partner of us that also says, hey, what is it that you want to, like, what is it you want to do now? Okay, let's go do that. Because I do believe that the ego was built because of commands that we gave the ego as young people in fear of this different things that happened. And it's simply operating because we gave it commands, and it's doing what we command. And if we can understand what we commanded of our ego, we can give our ego different commands, and our ego can then become more of an ally versus more of, an enemy. Because for a lot of people, the ego is an enemy. Okay.
Sounds good.
We'll make
The
arrangements.
answer is the practice.
I love it. We'll talk about that. I love you guys.
3.
Hey, thank you guys for hanging out with me. Yoram, how can people get a hold of you?
I'm at home. How can people get a hold of me? Just through email. I can put my email in the comments, or through direct message, or through heyyoram.com.
I love that. Heyyoram.com. Will you go back in the feed and just drop your information somewhere in the comments after we're done? That'd be great. Steven, what's up, brother? How can people support you and what you're up to in life, and how people can get a hold of you?
absolutely. There's an email I'll give you, and then my coaching website that you can also send a comment through. So my email is Steven, Steven, at SD, like San Diego, soldbysteve.com. And then coachingwithsteve.com is my coaching website, and you can just go send an email through that.
Cool. Hey, thanks, guys. I'm going to finish up with Clay. Thank you guys for hanging out. Clay and I are going to wrap it up, and we'll talk to you guys real soon.
All right, guys.
Oh, I think I shut
Nice meeting you guys. It's awesome meeting you guys.
Sorry. Hey, brother. Thank you very much for hanging out, man. Let's kind of finish up really quick because you got 3 different things that I think are really, really important that people need to know, which is meditate, journal, and gratitude, and why they're so powerful. So if we can finish up with that, then we'll sign off. I know that's a long conversation. We can do that let's see if we can do that in 2 minutes.
Oh, you know what? Here's what I'll say. I want to connect it here. Your question at the end was beautiful. Okay, guys, we had this awesome conversation, and we know that the ego has historically been this negative thing, and it makes us do things like react in negative ways.
Yeah.
Okay. And we have, and our ego is afraid of dying. Okay. How do we move forward with that? And that's what I said at the very end there when I said it's the practice. Martine, you have morning and evening rituals and routines that impress the ever-living crap out of me.
Thank you.
I guarantee Stephen and you, and the way you're breathing and the way you're actively practicing breath and the way you guys have accountability connections. That's another example of a practice. I guarantee Yoram, he's got some amazing stuff. And I actually am very curious. I want to go check him out and dig around in his little treasure trove too.
The rock star.
So my message is this, and you know what, we were going to talk about breathing and different types of breathing, right?
Yeah.
And Yoram, for example, and you guys can Google this if you need to, Yoram talked about box breathing.
Yeah.
And that is a technique. And I told him that I didn't particularly like that technique. I'm not talking about I don't like it because I don't think it's effective. I don't like it for me.
Yeah.
I have a different technique of breathing. And then I mentioned Wim Hof's breathing. So there's all these different techniques. So when we come down to meditation, journaling, and gratitude, those are really big, really vague words. So the one thing I would say is find what works for you.
Yeah.
If it does not feel good, stop. Find one that feels good. Now here's the trick in the discernment. It's kind of like the gym conversation. Obviously, the first time you go to the gym in 6 months, it's not going to feel good.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to discern, why does it not feel good? Like when I start meditating and I sit there quiet for 30 seconds, does it not feel good because I start thinking about my 3rd grade teacher and how she haunted me? Or does it not feel good because I'm not doing it right? If you think you're not doing it right, you probably are. Right? So if you got to be careful here. Test and play with those 3 habits. Suffice it to say, Martine, I think those are the same 3 habits that you promote, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a reason every successful person on the planet will tell you about those 3 habits.
Absolutely.
And it's because they're important. So do them. That's I saw it. So what I'm offering in this PDF that you see scrolling across here, first off, my website is enthusiastically.com. And you can go there and you can find all kinds of resources, all kinds of blog articles, and all kinds of ways to get in touch with me. If you want to be more focused and productive, that's me. Yeah. The 3 habits are the foundation. The 3 habits are the base. And in that ebook that you can get there, you will find a generic approach to the 3 habits. I don't stand here and say this is the way. I think the 3 habits are the way, but how you do those 3 habits is a huge, infinite can of worms.
Absolutely. Yeah. I remember at one point you were telling me I was telling you I was doing the Wim Hof stuff, and then you were real concerned about me. And, for me, what I got out of Wim Hof was I actually started to have experiences of death. That's what happened for me. because when I do my 30 breaths, and then I let breath out, and I'm sitting here with the timer, with Wim Hof timer, right? And it's timing, and I haven't taken in oxygen for a minute and 30 seconds, a minute and 40 seconds. I'm at a minute and 49, 50 seconds. I'm going to go 2 minutes. I've only made it to 2 minutes a couple times, but there has probably never been a time that I've done the Wim Hof exercise that so what you do, guys, is you breathe in 30. On the 30th breath, you blow out, and that's where you maintain yourself. And you maintain no breath coming in. And at that point, you start to have thoughts that you don't have normally. You don't have the same thoughts that you had when you were breathing. When you breathe in and out, life's fine. But when you have no breath and you're consciously not breathing, your body does stuff. And you start to recognize that your body does stuff. Now, it's just like we're going right with COVID-19. When we don't have what we had before, we're going to start to recognize stuff. And like you said, Clay, we're out of breath. We have nowhere to go. This is it. How are you going to manage yourself powerfully? What are you going to do with yourself in this, at least another 25 days, at least in the United States, another 25 days. And it's probably going to go in at least another couple of weeks after that, I think.
Probably going to come back in the fall.
Exactly. So what are we going to do? How are we going to reorganize our thoughts? How are we going to reorganize what we are doing in our life? How are we going to spend time in this moment right now?
So one quick thing.
Yeah.
Martine, you just described Wim Hof breathing technique. One of all the breathing that we were talking about before probably wasn't that, at least for me, it wasn't that technique.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
That technique does some stuff to your body. And the techniques that we were talking about earlier were slowing down your breath.
Exactly.
Conscious slowing down your breath.
Yes.
And taking nice deep breaths.
Yeah.
I love that exercise by Wim Hof, and you're right. I do it sometimes, and I use it often. And if you remember, you and I remember it. I remember when I had you do it before.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that 2-minute window. It's like this, you get these glimpses into your death. You get these glimpses into some panic.
Yeah.
And your stuff starts reacting. I love it. It's important.
So what I learned from you real quick, I keep saying I'm going to wrap up and I don't wrap up, but what I learned from you was flow. I learned from you. I knew flow, but I didn't know flow until I got you. So struggle, release, flow, and recovery. So real quick, I'm going to say what I'm going to do to recover, and then we'll finish, and then you'll say what you're going to do, then we'll sign off. Is that cool? So flow is struggle, release. We're in flow. So this time that we are together, I call this flow, because spending time with 3 other gentlemen that I have a lot of respect for, a lot of love for, and I'm learning. I've got to have my attention here. I'm not like out in the park and all that. Like I'm here, which has me be in flow. Now I'm going to go into my recovery mode. I'm going to go recover now after we're done. So I use recovery to celebrate the fact that we just did 2 hours and 10, 15 minutes of amazing content, amazing connection, of value, I believe, and to just anchor myself in, to optimize, to settle myself in. I will use meditation for at least 15 or 20 minutes to do that. And that is recovery. And that is and I got to tell you guys, if you're going to get anything out of what we talk about, the most important part of anything in my life, and I suggest this in your life, is recovery, is celebrating what you do, celebrating your life, celebrating who you are. Like Stephen was talking about, is, you might not be the human being you want to be, but damn it, celebrate the human being you are right now. Become aware and become the human being, because without celebration, without acknowledgement, without an understanding of who you are right now, you're not going to go anywhere. Clay, why don't you finish this off, brother?
I'm so sad. A few minutes ago when I think it was Steven that was talking about nighttime.
Yeah.
I actually went and I called up my conscious flow control PowerPoint or Google slide presentation, and I had ready to present and share the screen the 4 stages of flow, and I was going to talk about how important recovery is. I literally was going to have this conversation then. Since then, because we've wrapped up a couple times, I closed that window. So it would take another minute and a half for me to get it back up. Let me just say this about flow and recovery. 1, really big picture description. Flow is a state. We were talking about anger earlier. We were talking about fear. And Stephen mentioned, and I think Yoram mentioned as well, our bodies go into different states of existence. When Martine was talking about Wim Hof breathing, and he's doing the breaths in and out, in and out, in and out, and then he does the exhale and holds his breath. There's a couple different ways to slice the pie, but he's physically putting himself into a state of flow. That flow in that case is because he's thinking he's going to die. He's telling his body, you're probably going to die. Yeah. And he's putting himself into a deep state of flow. And that's causing the other reactions. The point that Martine is making is there are 4 stages when you start looking about the flow cycle. Struggle, release, flow, which, as Martine said, in the last couple hours, him and I and Stephen and Yoram have been in flow. You, as a viewer of this, went into flow while you were watching this to some depth. Yes. Probably not as deep as Martine and I are. But then there's this other stage that everybody forgets about. It's called recovery.
And you had to pound that in my brain to get me to start doing it. Yeah.
It's so important. It's the time. It's the time when your brain and your body recovers from this performance. Yoram talked about he's a high performance coach. I'm a performance coach. I'm a high performance coach as well. And when you're performing, think about playing basketball. Think about hitting a baseball. Think about throwing a football or sprinting or riding a bicycle or whatever you do. When you're performing, you're putting energy out. You need to recover. And here's the thing. How does it feel to be in flow, Martine? It feels great, right?
I love it. Yeah.
I love being in flow.
It's like, it feels like 5 minutes. I mean, we've been on this for 2 hours and 12 minutes and 30 seconds. It feels 5 or 6 minutes.
Tonight, when my energy comes down, I'm going to start having all these thoughts. Like, did I put my foot in my mouth? Did I share too much about Tara? Did I embarrass myself with how much I was touching my face and feeling my beard?
Yeah.
Did I interrupt Yoram and piss him off? Did I step on Martine's toes? All these thoughts are going to come.
Yeah.
When my energy's low. Guess what? That's normal. That's recovery.
That's recovery.
The question is, how do you feel about it? Do you feel good that you are currently in recovery, or do you feel not good? So if I allow myself to focus on all my screw ups and all my bad things, I'm going to start feeling not good. The trick is that awareness, the breath, getting into the moment, taking a breath and saying, okay, I'm thinking about how big my foot is and what it tastes like in my mouth. I'm thinking about how fat I look. I'm thinking about how old I look. I'm thinking about how bald I look. All that stuff's bad. Hang on. Right now I feel bad. Right now I feel bad because I'm looking at this stuff. What does that mean? That means I'm in recovery. Why am I in recovery? I'm in recovery because today I met 2 new, awesome, amazing people. Because I got to hang out with Martine. Because I got to go into flow right now, this deep.
Yeah.
That's why I'm in recovery. I'm thankful.
Yeah.
I'm sad right now. I'm thankful. I'm hurting. So it's this constant struggle to be in the moment and be present. And it's like Steven said, it's hard. It's hard, and you got to do the workout because Martine, the curls.
Didn't you send me these?
Probably yes. I recognize them.
I love you, brother. I love you, man. Thank you very much for hanging out, man. You just always bring. I mean, we could talk hours and hours and hours and hours. Let's also do flow. Let's also do flow real soon.
Do flow. Okay. I do flow every day, Holmes.
I know. But see, my audience doesn't necessarily like people in the curiosity theory know flow. But for my version of how I teach flow, you have a whole different, like we have different ways that we approach it. And I'd love to get a couple other people that are flow geniuses on here. So yeah.
Flow is fun. I'm with you, man.
Different perspective.
Thank you, Martine. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for doing what you do. Please don't stop. You're changing the world, brother.
Thank you. I love you, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Take care, my brother.